So, does this really work? People say, guys, does this really work? I'd say, here's a chicken slide that Steve Miller gave me. Have you showed this group this? Someplace. So here are 1957 chicken genetics and 2001 chicken genetics. Okay, and they're the same age, right? Do they grow more now? Yeah. Do they yield more now? Yeah. What about feed conversion? What do the ones at the top convert? 2.6 to 1? What do the ones at the bottom convert? 1.8 to 1. So they grow more, they have more yield, they eat a third less feed. Okay, can you make multiple trait progress? How'd they do that? They use the multi-trait dollar index. I got a friend that runs the genetic selection program for the Pig Improvement Company. He can tell you the dollar difference of the genetics next year versus this year on the pig genetics that PIC is producing. They use exactly the same technology. Now, let's make it personal. We go back in our database all these years and we can look at where dollar profit is. Here's an interesting one. Between 1985 and 1995, we made no change in profit. We made the cattle grow faster, but they got bigger and they ate more. We know that now, so we can look back at those genetics and the EBVs we have. We made no change in dollar profit for 10 years. We wasted a decade of selection. Between 1995 and 2010, we made an improvement of about $2 per head per year, about $200 a year on the index. Okay? We're pretty focused today. We have one selection objective, and that's dollar profit. People say, you're worrying about structure? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to use a bad-footed, small-testicled wild bull, okay? But within reason, if the bulls are within our bounds of acceptability on those subjective traits, we're going to select for one thing, and that's the index. And as we look forward, our rate of progress will dramatically increase. And the customers that follow us will follow that trajectory. And over time, they will accumulate a significant advantage in terms of retained equity over people who don't. And that's the choice you have. So take-home points from today. In today's market, the differences between good genetics and average genetics make up massive differences in equity. You need to know where you are in that field. You need to know how you stack up. And you need to select utilizing one of these indexes to make sure that you're balancing all these traits and making the right selection decisions. If you do, when you look back a decade or two from now, you will have accumulated more equity. Okay? That's a big deal. It's important. Okay? That's the end of my talk. Open for a few questions. Yes?
I just wonder what your acceptable cow weaning weight like the cow weight for your calf weight at weaning time. What's the acceptable percentage?
The question is, what's the acceptable calf weight per cow weight on a percentage basis? And that's so dependent on your environment, okay? It's so dependent on your environment. I mean, our average cow weight today in the system in body condition score 5.5 at weaning time when you wean those across those 5,000 cows is somewhere, and I'm talking mature cows, not the young cattle, is somewhere up in the 1,375 pound range, okay? And the average bull coming on test weighs 680 pounds. Okay, so, you know, we're pushing that 50%. If we wanted that percentage to go higher, we would select those cows down in size, but we would give up carcass weight. Okay, so there's an antagonism there. When I come back and give this talk 10 years from now, I hope to be able to show a graph that says cow weight went down and carcass weight went up. That'd be pretty cool, right? That'd be the goal. Not really the goal. The goal is to make more profit, but that'd be one of the things that fell out from it. Next question.
What's your minimum accuracy before you're going to consider?
The question is, what's the minimum accuracy we would consider before we use an animal? The explanation for why I'm going to answer this is fairly complicated. We don't have time to give it. The short answer is an EPD or an EBV is the best guess. It has a 50% chance of going up or down. If I use a group of young bulls that are all high on their EBVs, that have an average EBV of profit that's really high, and you use only the old proven bulls, I will beat you. I'll make some mistakes, and I'll have some phenomenal wins, and they'll balance each other out. If you go buy 10 bulls a year, you will get the average EBV of the genetics you use. If you sample one, then you better make sure he has some accuracy, because if you buy one and he goes way down, then you hurt yourself. In our system, because we're breeding 5,000 cows, we use 20 bulls a year. I don't have to worry about accuracy. Okay, I just roll it.
Lee?
Yes.
Got a question up here from the folks participating on the webcast from Thessalon. Question is, how does longevity fit into the profit index?
That's one of the most astute questions of the day. Probably one of the only traits that we don't have characterized in an EBV today that's a real driver for profitability is longevity. Okay, so it's a really hard trait to get a handle on. Why? Because I'm trying to make genetic progress, so I'm rolling generations, so I'm kicking cows out. So the average age of the mothers of our bulls is like 3.5 years. Okay, so we don't have a good measure for that. The easiest way to impact longevity, if you want to impact it, is with crossbreeding. The easiest way to impact longevity is with crossbreeding. If you want long-lived cows, make them crossbred cows. The data says they'll produce something like 2 to 3 more calves on average in their lifetime. Okay, so for the people that rightfully are worried about longevity, crossbreed. It's hard for us to get a genetic valuation for it. It's not in dollar profit. It should be, but it's not. Can't measure it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Presume we're genomically testing? Yeah. Yeah, we're doing some DNA testing. At this stage, DNA is not a very useful tool to us. Okay, and the reason it's not is that we're evaluating most of the traits individually to find the outliers. If I go sample an Angus bull in the U.S. today, outside of our program, he needs to have a Pfizer 50K profile for dry matter intake. And if he's above the top 30%, I'm not going to use him on dry matter intake, okay? But other than that, I'm going to say today, we're not using genomic evaluations. My guys, which are really your guys, okay, Mike and Steve and Peter, the guys at Bio tell me we should. We're taking samples, we're evaluating it, but today it's having very little impact in our selection. Okay.
All right, unfortunately, I'm going to cut off questions there. Lee will be speaking in later on, and then in addition to that, there's going to be a panel at the end of the day where you're going to get access to all these speakers to be able to pound them with questions.